Bigfoot, a 50-year journey come full circle, written by Dr. Matthew A. Johnson. We are on Chapter 6, The Expedition to Mount Elijah. I'm Willie Rose. Dr. William York, otherwise known as Bill, had previously assigned me the task of assembling an expedition team to go up on the mountain within 1 or 2 weeks of our lunch meeting. Although I was 8 months new to Grants Pass, Oregon, a local gentleman interested in the Bigfoot phenomena had contacted me and offered his assistance if it was ever needed. His name is Doug Thomas. Doug is a local pastor and principal at the Vineyard Christian School. He's a very kind soul who would give anyone the shirt off his back. He's an avid outdoorsman and knows the mountains in southern Oregon, including the logging roads, like the back of his hand. He stands about 5 feet 10 inches tall, is handsome, always smiling, and is missing his right arm. When I first met him, he joked about how he lost it to a sand shark in the desert. In case you haven't caught on, he has a great sense of humor, too. I contacted Doug and told him all about Bill and his years of experience in Africa. I told Doug about Bill's request that I assemble a research team and asked him if he could help me put it together. Doug enthusiastically responded in the affirmative, and we brainstormed about all the guys that we both knew and thought would make good team members. We managed to put together a ragtag bunch of guys who were equally enthusiastic to join us up on Mount Elijah to help us look for evidence of Bigfoot roaming around in the wilderness near the Oregon Caves National Monument Park. There was a total of 15 expedition team members, including Dr. York, Doug, and myself. The remaining 12 individuals consisted of a bunch of local avid outdoorsmen, including the 16-year-old neighborhood kid down the street who was dying to go out into the mountains with us. Also, accompanying us were Bill Lee, a national radio broadcaster for ABC Radio at the time, and his cousin Darrell Stout, both hailing from the state of Texas. Finally, my father, Art Johnson, accompanied us too. My father was 70 years old at the time of our first expedition and a retired Oregon State Trooper. He served for 25 years and closed out his law enforcement career by helping to run the Fingerprint Bureau. My father was very fascinated by the Bigfoot phenomenon because of his own alleged experience that occurred during a deer hunting experience 36 years earlier in 1964. To be clear, he never called it a Bigfoot encounter. You'll understand why in just a moment. Apparently, on a cold fall morning, my father took my older brother up into the logging roads in the mountains above Seaside, Oregon. My brother was 10 years old at the time, which would have made me only 3 years old. I was too young to remember anything about what was conveyed by the both of them during their return home. The only reason that I know anything about this story is because at the age of 12, I found and read a copy of my father's typed-up Oregon State Police report of the alleged encounter while I was rummaging through some boxes in the upstairs attic. When I asked him about what I had found and read, he only spoke to me about it once and then never again after that. My father had reached a point on one of the logging roads where he thought it was a good place to park the Chevy station wagon, hike up the hill, and see if he and my older brother could spot any deer in the area. After they made it to the top of the hill, they hunkered down and waited quietly for about 10 minutes. They did not see any deer at all. Matter of fact, the whole area appeared to be void of any animal or bird activity. It was eerily silent, the kind of silence that can scream to your sixth sense while in the woods. Suddenly, my father reported that there was an extremely loud scream that sounded as loud as a jet engine. He said it was like someone flipped on a light switch. The scream transitioned into a repetitive whoop, 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 whoop that got louder and louder and louder until it reached a point that they had to cover their ears. Then the light switch flipped off. The sound had stopped as quickly as it had started. My father reported that both he and my older brother were alarmed and could not tell where the sound was coming from. Still hunkered down, my father decided to make some noises in order to flush out whatever it was that was making the extremely loud noises. Well, my father received a response. It wasn't an audible response. Rather, he reported that something large started running toward them through the brush and trees. My father and brother were high up on the hill, and they were looking downwards from an elevation that was about 100 feet higher than where the mystery screamer was positioned. The next thing that my father reported was very unusual and sent goosebumps up and down my body when I read about it in his report. He described that both he and my older brother heard and saw something running through the brush toward them from below the hill. They could see the brush moving and some smaller trees being pushed over, yet they could not see whatever it was that was running through the brush or displacing the trees. It was as if the aggressive screamer was invisible. He reported that it stopped charging toward them when he raised his hunting rifle and pointed it in the direction of the breaking brush. My father immediately guided my older brother down the other side of the hill that they had hiked up in order to reach the Chevy station wagon. He opened up the front right passenger door, directed my older brother to lay on the floor under the dashboard, covered him up with a blanket, and told him not to move or come out from under the blanket until he returned to the car. My father took his hunting rifle and hiked back up to the top of the hill. He started making noises again, including blowing his nose in order to get the attention of whatever it was that was down the other side of the hill. According to my father's report, the brush started breaking again and trees were being pushed over. However, he still couldn't see anything. The charging stopped. Then he said that he heard what sounded like a clanking, heavy metal door. Then the scream occurred again, followed by the high-pitched whoop, 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 whoop that got louder and louder and louder like a jet engine. Once again, my father found himself covering his ears with his hands. Then the noise stopped again like a light switch was flipped off. Then he heard the clanking heavy metal door again. Then the charging started coming up the hill again. My father raised his hunting rifle again, but this time the aggressive approach did not stop. My father ran down the other side of the hill toward the station wagon, threw his rifle in the back seat, quickly climbed into the car behind the steering wheel, started the car, put it into drive, and drove like a madman down the logging road to flee the area. 2 minutes later, my father and brother found themselves in a cul-de-sac area at a dead end of a logging road. Needless to say, they were both scared to death. My father reported that he spun the Chevy station wagon around and hightailed it back down the logging road where they had just come from. My father allegedly passed the spot where he had parked the station wagon earlier while driving 50 miles per hour. He returned my older brother to our home and then went to the Oregon State Trooper office located in Astoria, Oregon. He typed up his report and submitted it to his commander. The next morning, he went back up to the area with 2 other Oregon State Troopers. Apparently, they were armed to the teeth with some real heavy-duty firepower. They spent a couple of hours hiking all over the area where the alleged encounter occurred. Other than the broken brush and pushed-over trees, they found no other evidence. No footprints, no hair samples, and no visuals. The only other thing that they did manage to find was a tree located right by the logging road that had been snapped off about 9 feet off the ground, and the top of the tree was laying on the road. Apparently, this happened while they were searching the area. The tree was snapped over across the road on the side of their car that was closer to the dead end of the road. They went back to the state police office and reported to the commander what they found. They were all told never to mention the event again. As ordered, my father kept his mouth shut. He filed a copy of his report in a box in the attic and never mentioned it again until I found the report. He was adamant that he didn't know what he and my older brother encountered because they never saw what it was. My father, Art, was excited and grateful that I invited him to come along with us on our expedition. As previously stated, he was 70 years old. He knew he wasn't going to be able to join us while we hiked up and down the sides of the mountains in the area. However, he could stand guard while we all slept through the night. He had already been retired for 15 years and had worked some occasional side jobs as a graveyard security guard. Therefore, he was used to staying awake all night long. Although the rest of us younger bucks were excited to be there together, we were also very happy that my father was willing to pull the graveyard shift and make sure that we were all protected while we slept. On Saturday, September 9th, 2000, we met in the morning in the parking lot where the Hellgate Jet Boat Excursion business is located in Grants Pass, Oregon. Dr. York's and my private practice office were also located in the same building complex. Once all 15 members of the expedition were assembled, we proceeded to drive toward the Oregon Caves National Monument Park. There are rules about not camping inside the park boundaries. I had previously purchased a map of the local logging roads from the BLM office and located a spot that would keep us out of trouble with the rangers. Once we reached the dead end of the spur logging road on the east side of Mount Elijah near the Bigelow Lakes area, we packed up our gear and hiked in on a trail. Dr. York wanted us to camp up on the ridgeline of Mount Elijah on the south side of the park boundaries of the Oregon Caves. He chose the ridgeline camping spot based on his years of experience of working with gorillas in Africa. Although Dr. York knew absolutely nothing about Bigfoot, he assumed that they were more apt to be hanging out on the ridgeline during the summer than they were to be hanging out around the Bigelow Lakes in the valley below on the east side of the ridgeline. We stopped several times along the way to give my father some rest. Truth be told, we needed the rest too. We eventually made it up on the top of the ridgeline and found a meadow surrounded by trees. We had our camp set up, tents and all, before noon. We consumed some snacks for lunch, and then I gathered everyone together. We reviewed the BLM map, divided up into 7 teams of 2 men. Dr. York assigned all 7 teams to their areas, and we began to go over every nook and cranny of Mount Elijah. We covered the west side and the east side of the mountain. We covered the south side and the north side of the mountain. We covered the valleys below, including the Bigelow Lakes. We were ready to deploy our old-school research tactics, otherwise known as the paparazzi money shot approach. In a nutshell, this approach philosophically believes that the Bigfoot species are descendants of Gigantopithecus, which is Latin for giant mountain ape. It was believed that these descendants migrated over the Bering Sea land bridge along with all of the other animals and humans during the Ice Age. Since the Bigfoot species were simply giant mountain apes, or wood apes as some researchers referred to them, then we could aggressively pursue them in the forest just like any other animal. Therefore, old schoolers were in the habit of utilizing high-tech equipment to assist them in their research, such as trail cams, seismic sensors, night vision equipment, thermal imaging equipment, etc. After hours and hours of relentless searching, all expedition party members returned to our base camp, hidden in the meadows surrounded by the trees on top of Mount Elijah. It was late and the sun was starting to go down. We scrambled to get our dinners ready. Some gentlemen simply brought sandwiches or snacks. Others brought camp stoves so they could cook up their dinners. While we were eating, we all shared the evidence that we had found in the area. We found all sorts of very large human-like looking footprints. We found tracks that appeared to belong to a very large adult male, an adult female, and to an adolescent child. We also found one sunning area and 3 bedding areas that were all freshly used. We also found scat piles. After we were all fully fed and done sharing about what we all found, I waited for about an hour and then pulled out my Ghetto Blaster stereo box. I had managed to create a cassette tape of a repetitive loop of a very loud and annoying crying baby. I played the tape over and over again and again for over an hour while I was cooking up some bacon in a frying pan. No man and no animal could resist the alluring aroma of bacon cooking in a frying pan. By the way, the theory of playing the repetitive loop of a crying baby over and over again and again was that it would either sound like a wounded animal and bring in the Bigfoot, or they would simply be curious about the crying baby and want to come in and take a peek. This theory made sense to me. Both Dr. York and I believed that the Bigfoot that my family and I encountered was drawn to us because of our 3 young blonde-haired children. Why not try playing a repetitive loop tape of a crying baby? Also, who could resist the aroma of bacon frying in a pan? Guess what? It worked. We were all exhausted and started dropping like flies. Dr. York and I were the last ones to hit the hay right around midnight. We were all sound asleep in our pup tents and snoring up a storm. All of us except for my 70-year-old father, who was up guarding the camp. He had slipped himself inside a sleeping bag and then sat still in a camp chair in the middle of our base camp. He was hoping that he looked like a stump. 3 hours later, he was kicking at my feet, which were sticking outside my pup tent because I'm almost 7 feet tall. He kicked and kicked at my feet until I finally woke up. I stuck my head outside of the tent and whispered loudly, "What?" My father responded, "Look over there." He then turned on his flashlight and lit up an adult male Bigfoot who was standing on the perimeter of our base camp. As soon as he was lit up, he ran to his right, our left, and you could see the branches and brush moving as he ran away. Later on, after I fell back to sleep, my father saw 2 more Bigfoot on the perimeter of the base camp. This time, he didn't bother to wake me up, and he kept his flashlight off. The next morning, after we all woke up, my father was like a kid in a candy shop. He shared with all of the men how he had successfully kept us safe from the encroaching Bigfoot by lighting them up with his flashlight. The men were captivated by his story and thanked him for being willing to pull the graveyard shift while guarding camp. My dad was smiling with pride regarding his contribution. He was also elated that he actually had a visual of a Bigfoot. After we were done eating breakfast, Bill Lee videotaped everyone regarding their experiences up on top of Mount Elijah. He ended his interview with Dr. York. He proceeded to say that he didn't come up to Mount Elijah to find Bigfoot. Rather, he came up to the mountain to look for evidence of Bigfoot in the area. He then shared with everyone that he started his journey as a skeptic, but he was leaving as a believer. He acknowledged all of the evidence that was found by everyone, including the tracks, sunning area, and bedding area that he saw with his own eyes. He concluded in his interview that Bigfoot is very real. Finally, he expressed confidence that if we kept coming out into the forest to look for Bigfoot over and over again and again, we would eventually learn more about their patterns and behaviors, and it would eventually become easy to find them and interact with them, just like many animals he had worked with back in Africa. The expedition to Mount Elijah on the south side of the Oregon Caves National Monument Park boundaries was a success. We had confirmed that they were in the area. We had found evidence which was confirmed by visuals. 15 men confirmed all of the above. It turns out that I wasn't crazy after all, and that Bigfoot really existed. Little did I know, I had officially become hooked. I became addicted to the Bigfoot phenomena, and I wanted to learn more, much more. At that time, I had no idea that my newfound hobby would keep me coming back out into the mountains looking for the big hairy guy for the next 2 decades. However, it didn't matter because I wanted answers. The truth is out there. That's the end of Chapter 6 of Bigfoot, 50-Year Journey Come Full Circle, written by Matthew A. Johnson. Chapter 7 is next. Come one, come all. I'm Willie Rose.